Hello everybody, welcome to the channel. This is Jay Tahoe. So for tonight's video, what I wanted to talk about is the intellectual narcissism in the black pill community. And what do I mean by that, right? What I mean is that I think there's a lot of people, in the black pill community who are intellectual narcissists. They think they have a grandiose sense of intellect, because they think that they understand, how human attraction works, and they think they've got it all figured out. And the quote unquote normies, are just blissful idiots, who live in a bubble. Now, I would actually argue, right, that the world is kind of built for the quote unquote normie, or average IQ, average strength, average income person. And they're trying to, pretend that like these normies are, and I guess I fall into that category, right? Because, anybody who enjoys mainstream things like, like sports ball and, and primetime TV, those are the stupid normies, and they don't like, it almost reminds me of hipsters, like the whole I liked it before it was cool type thing. But what it really boils down to is I think, a lot of these people are actually very, very average IQ, or very average intellect, if you will. Because again, anytime you try to call out, the flaws in the science that they present, and the studies that they ignore, they just kind of gloss over it. So, it's almost like religion. How like a lot of religions are just like, well, it just is, or you just have to have faith. When you ask for reasoning, you see a lot of that dogmatism in this community. You're gonna see comments like the black pill is the undisputed truth, and you know what? Like, there are truths in it. Okay, like I think that anybody who doesn't acknowledge that looks play a role in attraction, for both men and women. I mean, come on, we've known this since we were children. That's just delusional to believe it doesn't play any role. Now how much of a role, that's where the big question is. And I would actually say a large role. In order for you to be attracted to somebody, they have to tick X number of boxes, and the same for them to be attracted to you. There's going to be more things that are going to make somebody not attracted to you than there are things that are attracted to you. And that's, unless you're one of, a very small number of people, that's just how it is. And even then, you'll hear people arguing over which celebrities they think are attractive. I remember like during my time in in middle school and high school, you'd hear teenage girls saying like, oh, well, I think Leonardo DiCaprio is hot. Another one would be like, nah, he's not really that attractive. So there is, even among people who are, objectively chads, there's still some subjectivity. But the real thing, right, that gets me is, you'll call out, like, sure, I'm all for, if you have a replicable study, I'm all for seeing it and, observing the trend and, making a hypothesis based on the observation. Now, the problem is that, they're going to present to you a lot of very flawed statistics. For example, we all know about the famous OkCupid experiment, which had a sample size of 14 million. The problem is it never states, how many of those votes are women and how many are men. And we later found out that online dating sites are comprised of about 75% men to 25% women. Now, obviously, when you have a mismatch in data like that, right, in groups, there's no control. So you're getting you're getting women who are kind of like bombarded, so they automatically just filter right off the bat. It's just the looks filter, right? Another thing, and I know I'm repeating myself here, but again, this is aimed at the people, the hardcore dogmatists and the people who are in the cult, so to speak. This isn't even aimed at you, because I already know you've made up your mind, and it is what it is. That's fine. This is aimed at once again at the people who would be on the fence. Humans experience pleasure through 5 senses, right? So, looks, sight, obviously being one of them, you need to be attracted to your partner. Now, I've presented this study, a million times, right? The MHC complex, how, from the standpoint of evolutionary biology, you need somebody who has the opposite immune system to yours. because the time that it's most likely for somebody to die, other than obviously in old age, is during infancy. They need a strong immune system. You're most likely to die from naturally occurring pathogens as an infant. Now, there's plenty of scientific data to back this up. I encourage you to look up the t-shirt experiment, in which basically women were presented t-shirts for men, and by smelling them, they knew who they were attracted to. Because you're actually, believe it or not, your natural body musk actually conveys your MHC complex. You know what? Basically, you're the makeup of your immune system, and subconsciously it registers with a partner. So the problem is that when you use online dating experiments, that variable isn't present. Okay, that's like if we were racing two cars and we had to use the same engine, but we were allowed to use different tires. And we came to the conclusion that, oh well, the tires were the deciding factor in the race. Okay, and I know, again, I've used that analogy a lot, or the building a computer, that the graphics card was more important than the CPU when it came to the rendering. But the problem is, when you don't have a control, you can't actually determine what's important. Now, there are going to be times where the reaction to somebody based on their looks is, of course, good, but then you lose attraction later because, say, the voice isn't attractive, or you're not attracted to them on an MHC immunocompatibility level, the major histocompatibility complex, which again is something you can't see. Now, obviously, you have things like voice. Now, you can't tell me, right? For all the dudes who are watching this, say you have some chick, and she's 10 out of 10, perfect, right? Great ass, face is 10 out of 10, and she opens her mouth and she sounds like Fran Drescher. Would you still be attracted to her? I know personally I could not be. So, even things like voice, for men, the size of a certain appendage, these are all things that, you have to factor in. And a person who's actually being honest with themselves, knows this. So where I see the intellectual narcissism is the fact that they're just convinced that, it's just the looks and it's nothing else, even though there's plenty of evidence to the contrary. And I think it's okay to say, we don't know. But nobody wants to, admit that we don't have all the answers. I see a lot of that in a lot of religions too. It's just, well, it is. You got to have faith. And I'm a person who requires a very high standard of proof. And again, I've always said you should make your reactions to things based on how well it's jiving with what you see in real life. And in real life, this whole, you need to be an 8 out of 10, dude, to get laid is just, it's nonsense. You see quite the opposite all the time. So, you got to ask yourselves, well, why? And they'll try to justify that with things like beta bucks and everything. But here's what actually gets me about that is you have someone like QB Willie who advocates, you go to Mexico and you ball out there and, you sleep with prostitutes. And again, I actually don't disparage anybody who does that. If that's your thing and that's what you want to do, that's fine. But here's where I think the bad logic comes into play. Is it's, men in America, men in the West are just, simping, and that's, how they're getting laid because it's beta bucks. But QB Willie, think about how logical this is, right? How much money is that going to cost you to get your plane ticket, your hotel, your food, your transportation, and then the actual prostitutes themselves while you're down in Mexico, right, in Tijuana, where that is legal? How much money are you going to spend on that? And yet you're worried about getting taken advantage of for a $20, Applebee's here at home, or a $5 cup of coffee. Hey, look, in the past, right, I've gone out, I've taken a girl out for coffee and gotten rejected after. And what, I'm out $5. But then there are times where, you meet up for coffee and it turns into something else. That's happened to me in the past too. So, it's it's that's not really a big, the logic there just doesn't make any sense to me. It's you're going to spend all that money that you probably don't have to go to a different, not to mention if you don't have a passport, now you got to get a passport, right? I think QB Lily lives in California, so I think it's a little, more inexpensive for him. But it's just like the logic behind that really just doesn't make much sense to me. But again, you watch the content and you make an informed decision for yourself. But what I really think a lot of this boils down to is a lot of these guys just want to have a feeling of superiority over someone else. They want to pretend like they're a lot smarter than the average person. And what I see is it's just really a lot of very average IQ, average intellect kind of guys, having a false sense of superiority to everybody else because they're like, yo, you're blue-pilled and you can't see what's really going on. I'm like, well, I make my life decisions based on, what I see happening around me. And what I see a lot of in the black pill community is just a lot of extremes, a lot of outliers as examples, a lot of, data that's incomplete, or missing a control group being presented to, make a case for a certain narrative. So if you're a person who's on the fence about all this, what I would suggest is, just go out and make your own observations on what you see going on and, make your decision based on that. But I really just see, a lot of guys who, want to feel good at something. They want to feel special. It's almost like a secret club. Like, oh, I'm so black pilled, man. But like, in reality, they don't really know anything. It's nothing earth shattering, really. I mean, like, we've all known that looks are important since we were a child. It's ingrained in us in frickin' Disney movies, for Pete's sake, right? So we've known this since, it's innate almost, like we know that. But again, we don't know, like, say what having a good voice will do if you have average looks, like things like that. It's so much more like, you have like guys like Face and LMS, it's like, we boil it down to looks, money, status. It's so much, there's so many more factors beyond that. And we talk about, like genetics and everything. We don't even talk about the environmental effect on the expression of genetics. It's just a way oversimplified view. And you have people like Martin Goldberg, who I don't really believe is a doctor. Because, I talk about this, to my friends, my family, my wife, stuff like this. And I've talked to people who are actually doctors, and I assure you, like, most of them would not sign off on this. They would acknowledge that looks play a role in mate selection, of course, but they would also say that we don't have enough data to conclusively determine what all the factors are. That's just something that, as human beings, we're going to have to keep searching for, and we're nowhere close. So I do think it's a lot of intellectual narcissism. I think it's people who want to feel superior to everybody else, but in reality, they don't really know anything more than average Joe. It's almost like a cult-like mentality. I do see that. So let me know what you think in the comments below, and I will see you in the next video. This is Jay Tahoe. Take care, everyone.